thought it would be good to have one of my former players when I was working at the Giants, David Tyree, come and talk to us about what he's doing. He just recently signed a franchisee agreement with Clean Juice, and I thought it would be a good idea for him to talk about the travails, especially given he started a couple of months pre-pandemic. So talk about those challenges and how he's been able to maintain, but also talk about, since we're getting in the season of the Super Bowl playoffs, talk about what made him famous, which is the catch, and just briefly speak on the uh, the events leading up to that spectacular Super Bowl run.
And there's a lot of backstory, but we don't have time to tell a whole backstory. But
yeah, and hopefully we can hop on again at a different time. But it's exciting. His story in itself is exciting. He actually wrote a book about the events leading up to the catch, and I think it's a worthwhile book because it goes through a lot of his backstory, his personal struggles from childhood to where he is today. And it's an amazing story about accomplishment and overcoming adversity. So I'm excited that he's able to join us, and hopefully we can, engage more athletes and entertainers to hop on the platform to gain knowledge and advice from the group that we have on the platform.
And on one of those points, it turns out many of the players have invested in franchises. So I just started scratching the surface as to who we know in franchising. And, we put a few trends together. So it's, I know that some of our families, we haven't seen many of them here, but Beth and Sam own 30 Planet Fitnesses and 20 Smoothie Kings and some others, and Dan Israel is the head of franchising for the Goldfish Swim School, and actually Beth is also becoming a franchisee here. Jeff Snyder has got this group called Limber. It's like a stretching, and then Heather Harris, who had taken Cycle Bar across the country, starts working for him. Abigail Pringle from my Denison days, now the president of Wendy's, in charge of all franchising. Another Denison guy is the CEO of Chili's. So I'm just sort of noting who does what, just so we can help each other. It's like another group we can form. Is anybody here in franchising or investing or otherwise?
The other day I just spoke.
Are you talking to us or someone else?
Talking to you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, the other day I just spoke with a franchise agent just to understand what the possibilities were. He seemed pretty knowledgeable, so if you wanted a speaker to talk about it from
that'd be great.
And Charles, I know that you talked to Paul Brownstein, my brother. He is active in franchising.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's got some good background information for due diligence on that.
Absolutely.
And then another theme before we turn, I do want to talk about the calendar, is this predictions and goals series has been great. It ended up leading to, almost 100 people participated in. I think what I like is when someone says, like, who's Eric Lindbergh? If you haven't met him, you literally can see, and everybody has answered these 4 or 5 questions. They've introduced themselves, they've reflected, they talk about prediction, their philanthropic interests, and then their asks, right? And then the one word. It looks like resilience came up again from and I love, I can just pull it up, is right here. Ron Diamond is he's in Chicago, works with 100 family offices. He's starting this like a Stanford program around family offices.
Ron Diamond, you're doing so many things in the
just watch for a second.
Family office space, and otherwise look forward to sharing your wisdom. Please introduce yourself.
First, great to be here. I've listened to several of your podcasts, and you do a terrific job. Ron Diamond, basically we represent about 100 single-family offices, ranging in size from 250 million to about 30 billion. We basically act as a filter. We're not a multifamily office, and we invest in private equity, venture capital, real estate, and credit.
But you get the point. Point is, if you want to get to know our network, it's been a nice exercise in doing so. So having said all that, again, we had some really interesting plans as it relates to lots of different aspects, but just any thoughts, questions, particularly as it relates to the events we mentioned or events we should be doing?
You haven't
Suggestions? Go ahead.
on.
Yeah,
Maybe
fine.
opportunities on food security, and there's a whole big effort in New York. It's called the Clean. I was supposed to get that information to you, Mark. But there's a whole effort in New York to bring in tech companies and everything about renewable energy. It's with
security.
and a couple of really good incubators, a global incubator group. So I can actually, it's called the Clean Fight. If anyone wants to Google that, it's the Clean Fight. And they're actually looking for advisors for their platform as well. So,
Are you just speaking that in general or towards an event around that theme that you'd like to see?
so maybe I could talk, I have to give them a call about, reach out to them about some other things anyway. So maybe I could do that. I could ask them if they want to talk about what they're doing to the 361 community.
There are a lot of people that touch on that theme, definitely.
Yeah, and then plus they're funded by the city and the New York State, and there is a city councilman who just and he's recreating Queens as a completely sustainable community. That was his campaign.
And Yvonne's been really great with our philanthropic causes, helping us connect. Anyone else with things that they'd like to do event-wise, or before we merge into the 11 o'clock? I'm looking around. I have to call on people here. Akshay or I mean, Jonathan, you were talking about venture before, but anybody, or Chaz, we're going to get back to the Africa event. We've got some great speakers lined up. Anyone else with ideas they'd like to see?
Hey, Mark, I'll throw it out there. More of a, talking my own book here, but been looking for inflation for a while. We've seen break evens break above the two-year level. I would be curious if anybody has ideas on how to play inflation, whether it's something as simple as buying tips to real estate to maybe a more complex product, but it's definitely something I'm focused on right now.
I did see the run up there. I mean, that sounds like a
Bitcoin
call for you. Someone said Bitcoin, but Bitcoin just fell. Stephen, any thoughts on inflation?
We're not as concerned about it yet. We think it's a ways off. So, but Jonathan and I have had this discussion for about a year. So. We'll be having it for a couple more, I fear. But.
Yes, we will.
Well, it's definitely a topic du jour. So given the point, so something we can explore, Jonathan. Any other themes? Akshay or Richard or?
I want to ask you a question with everyone here in the group. With all this unrest in the United States, why most people invest in the U.S., why they buy our bonds, our treasury, because of stability. Do you think, I think that's a really big question. How much is this going to affect where people are going to start putting their, buying their treasuries? And how does that affect the whole entire economy?
Very little.
Any?
Yeah, I agree. I go with very little as well.
There's not a lot of options. I mean, what are you going to do? Put it in China?
What's the least dirty in the laundry?
Exactly. It's the least dirty laundry. But purely, people are asking this question, right? And it'll be the whole question for the first half of this year. It's the debasement of Western currencies. The dollar will be the poster child headlining it. And maybe it becomes an issue. But, at this point, it's like buy Bitcoin, buy stocks, do something. Just don't own currencies. But
Yeah, Duncan, I agree with you too. I mean, it's still, when you look at anything else, I mean, the U.S. it's still a developed, advanced market. Our capital markets still work. Property, real estate, we still have all these things. So to your point, do you throw your money into A shares in China and hope that the government doesn't seize them? I have a hard time seeing anything change.
Yeah, but not into China, but overall, if if you keep on having this unrest, I'm wondering if it won't push all the capital towards a Bitcoin, or maybe, I don't know, once upon a time Australia or New Zealand was the
I can't see that. I mean, maybe the Bitcoin will have an allocation. Maybe there'll be some allocations on the edges, but
Duncan, don't worry. I'm going to hold all of my currency in Robux and Fortnite dollars. I'm going to do really well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Talking about talking your book.
Yeah.
So interesting times.
Stephen, I'm curious if you've seen a rotation to venture capital, given the uncertainties, I think, almost of valuations, right? And so, a rotation to venture capital where it's more on the come in terms of ultimate returns. I don't know if valuations certainly can get inflated quickly. People are holding venture capital, private company assets a lot longer for taking them public. But I don't know if right now you're seeing anything like that.
Well, valuations, excuse me, seem to be pretty stretched all over. Whether it's public, private, or venture doesn't really matter. They all seem a little stretched, and the ones that are most stretched are the ones that seem to be most attractive to invest in because they're in the prime areas of growth. So it's going to be a real fight to balance how you value something in this environment, because the old valuation metrics don't work, or they don't work well.
But the cynic in me says venture capital in the private markets can be more attractive in overinflated valuations because they're private. So you don't have an external, you don't have a market telling you what it should be worth. And so perhaps you're better able.
Jim, we're going to hit that in the asset allocation events in spades.
Okay, great.
Hey, this is Judd. I'm kind of a new participant here, waiting for our other thing to pop up. But as an old private equity guy, there's so much money out there, as you guys all know. The challenge is and always has been, finding quality management teams and quality deal flow. Everybody talks about a proprietary pipeline, but the key is finding the right managers that really do have access, to a stall of good talent and knows how to pick talent. More importantly, a lot of guys are great at the financials, but aren't very good at picking talent.
So I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to get my sharing going here, and I'm going to turn it over to, or I guess do this with Charles to talk about a few themes here. We've done these now 40th, it's our 40th week in a row. And you can sort of see what's happening. We got a lot of things brewing on the right side of the page. In fact, the Asset Allocation Summit is happening. So we need to eliminate it there. It's coming together here. From the digest, you can see, although I like this one, we're going to talk today with a guest that Charles bringing on, David Tyree, on some themes of how, you know, professional athletes get involved with businesses and franchising. And then we do want to talk about the catch. And then, you know, last week we had Arnold. So all of these, I'll put it in the chat, are clickable with the recordings. We got the event coming up after 11:30. Judd was just speaking, a number of others that you'll see. Great lineup of speakers talking about water as relates to, you know, from the venture side, or, you know, emerging technologies, as well as, you know, the infrastructure and the other, you know, I think Leslie hit it about mitigation. This follows the first one we did last year. Hi, Bill and Jerry, seeing who's up. And then the prediction series, as you've seen, been really great to get everybody's, you know, you really know the network. So if you go to the app and you look at people, we've attached what their videos look like or their poll results. And then, of course, and I think, and Charles is going to hit this later today, we really kick off our foundation, and we're doing it with a first event with Jerry Rice and Steve Young, as they've been focusing on what they call the 8 to 80 zones, helping underprivileged in some inner cities get access to resources so they can get a leg up as it relates to esports, media tech, you know, try to compete with Jonah Blake, but maybe collaborate with Jonah is probably the better word. So I did want to show a video kickoff of this of sorts, Charles, as I click right here. And I don't know if everybody's a Boston fan or a Giants fan or just a sports fan. I want you to just take after the advertisement. Sorry,
when being a fan
get the advertisement out of the way.
Our agents do the legwork, so saving
Start
on
with that.
auto insurance is easy. USA, what you're made of, we're made for.
Okay, here we go.
Every drive has a turning point. Super Bowl 42 was about to see not just its defining moment, but a play for the ages.
35 from their own 44. Manning takes the snap. Back to throw. Under pressure. Avoids the rush. And he's going to fight out of it. Fights out of it. Now throws it deep downfield. Wide open Tyree, who makes the catch. How in the world did he do that? What a play by Manning. He eluded 3 steps.
So, given that, Charles, you were on the sidelines, as I understand, calling in the plays, or signaling the plays.
Yeah. So it's great to be with you all. I really am excited about today, because really this is almost a pre-launch to not only an amazing event this evening with 8 to 80 and 361 launching their foundation, but it is a segue into a platform which is a passion of mine, is trying to get more athletes involved in investing, learning about investment opportunities, and seeking out good advice. People that have done it for many years are very knowledgeable in that area. And so I wanted to bring someone on that is actually has followed my steps from day one. He went to Syracuse University. He was drafted in the 6th round, just like I was drafted in the 6th round. He was a great special teams player. I made my name coming in as a rookie on special teams. And so actually he took over the player development position when I left the Giants to run player development. So we both are very closely intertwined in the things that we've done and the career paths that we've taken. He's now he's a franchisee of Clean Juice. So without further ado, I want to introduce David. David, thanks for joining us.
All right.
Welcome, David.
Got your camera? There you go.
Welcome,
Yeah.
David.
Excellent. I'm not, usually I can see myself, so I don't
We can see you. We can see you. You're good.
I can do this. You can see yourself better now.
There we go. I got some action.
All right.
Excited to see you. I appreciate the great introduction. It's great to be with them.
That's great. So David, quick question. So given all the things you've seen as a player development director in sports and getting guys engaged in transition after football, talk about your experiences with other players and the difficulties or the challenges that they face with getting good advice when thinking about another career outside of football.
Yeah, I think are there just in light of 20 to 22-year-old men coming into the National Football League, great financial inheritance with no real understanding about life in general, even beyond the way that the world works, business works. So there's a trust gap that that players and athletes, et cetera, begin to experience, and wide array of interest that it takes, what it takes to make decisions. It really takes time to bring them along to understand the unique opportunity that they have for whatever time they are going to participate in that NFL experience. So like I said, you and I both have the same kind of track record where we recognize the need for the education and opportunities, but to gain that kind of trust and bring people along can be challenging.
Definitely. So that brings us to what you're doing now. How did you want to become a franchisee? What made you, especially a small startup franchisor like Clean Juice, what made you want to be a part of that franchise?
Yeah, I've progressed as an individual, as a person, as I consider it was always about life, kind of like a value alignment. I mean, like that's the most important thing for me to start with, because if I can't be aligned with the right people, whether it's in partnership, in life, in relationship, even my wife, for Christ's sake, right? We need to kind of share some values so that when things are difficult, we don't share. That was how I came to conclude that franchise, and the health and wellness space is something that works well for me as I progress. And it was time to just take a leap, in all honesty, aside from me personally. Then I also have, don't laugh too heavy, but 7 amazing children, right? And I really wanted my children to have an environment where they can learn business, just flatline what it takes to actually do this on the front end, from some sweat equity to on the back end to just the logistics, supply chain. And so there was a lot of different factors, but we're excited.
And like you said, coming in, not having that, business experience, as you well know, you come from the same background that I come from, where our parents didn't own a business and didn't have the business acumen that you need to run your own business. So what are the challenges, especially given you opened your franchise literally months before the pandemic. So what are the challenges that you had to face, given you're new to this? You didn't have a lot of business acumen prior to jumping into this space. Who were the people that you surrounded yourself with to help you, give you guidance, but also how are you dealing with the challenges of the pandemic?
Great question. Launched just as the pandemic was kind of, June was our opening. So the pandemic was kind of we had come to terms, whereas March everybody's flustered. We weren't eligible for a lot of assistance, some deferrals here. So I think the biggest challenge, number one, was honestly staffing. Training and staffing, right? Like when you're dealing with a minimum wage type of majority of your staff is primarily minimum wage, especially high wage training, keeping the quality of a premium product. And so they got to have all those extra kids. sweat labor, but it was actually, man, more staff at different times to present the quality that was probably the number one. And of course, in the retail space, at 7 days around the clock, you're responsible for every single thing. The other challenges weren't as great, you know, like I kind of find ways to simplify what can appear to be so complex. I really just look at, you know, business is an extension of life. The same things that I have to do daily to run my home well is the same things that I have to do as a fiduciary standpoint to, you know, I look at, you know, values are my character, my reputation is my PR. All those, I kind of just find simple ways to merge and translate things where hopefully it's not too overwhelming, but you still have to learn a lot of it.
That's great. Now, you know, I could talk to you all day, but obviously, really understanding this evening, 8 to 80, we're kicking off 361 Foundation. We still hope that anyone on the call who hasn't contributed or donated to the cause, I wish you would join in. Just understand that athletes in general, whether it's their greatness on the field or greatness off the field, they have a story to tell, and it's an amazing story, and it's an inspirational story that we all can get behind, because I think it's important that we all learn from one another's experiences. And this evening you'll be learning from two of the greatest of all time to ever play this game. David, so as we wrap up, you know, what we got to talk about, what you're known for, right? We can't let you go without you kind of talking about not only the catch, but the events leading up to the catch, and how improbable most of us that were witnessed to practice that week, how improbable the events leading up to the catch actually were. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it would here. So what is, you know, what's been well detailed and spoken of is, that year practice much. He got back first all year. He got hurt early in the week, which means preparing. Friday practice, I basically had the worst practice maybe in practice history of all sports. And and what was supposed to be a dress rehearsal ultimately ended up being me dropping everything in a Friday practice. And I'm sure it put mostly the coach, you know, Coach Coughlin on edge. But it just was a bad day at work. You know, I can't, it's a bad day at work. Beat them up, ball chants going on everywhere. And, you know, of course, the players have fun with it. And at the end of the practice, you know, Eli, you know, it's been documented how, you know, he just approached me, hey, man, I know you'd be ready. And it was the stuff that makes great stories. Ultimately, I didn't have any low self-confidence. It was just a bad day at work. And, you know, you brushed it off, moved forward, and I expected to do great things. I can't say I expected to catch a ball on the side of my head when I woke up on Sunday morning, but I was certainly looking to find a way to make an impact. And that was certainly the day that God had appointed for me to do something monumental. So, yeah, there's a lot more that goes along with it. But, you know, like I said, I was happy to be Big Blue all day.
I muted you, Charles, so Tyree could be heard better. You want to unmute yourself. Sorry. Sorry about that.
So David, really appreciate you joining us again. 8 to 80 zone kickoff of 361 Firm, the foundation. If you haven't donated yet, please do. We are still offering raffle tickets for the event. Great articles that you can win. So please join us this evening. This is just the beginning. David, I really appreciate you joining us, and I appreciate the time, Mark.
Oh, thank you, David. And you saw that I threw a slide up about franchising broadly. We're going to create a group around it so that people can network. We've already found that one of my friends was doing a deal with one of the families. He's the franchisor, she's the franchisee. But just comparing notes, about those issues you raised. So we want to do that, and that's just an example of how we can work with Charles and some of the athletes as we create. We want to. Someone told me today, we do some things not really well, right? And we can drop a lot of passes, but we have this authentic thing here going. So we want to share it with more people like yourselves. Well, having said that, I'm going to switch gears. Stephen, you usually take over from now. Stephen Burke at ARS to talk about the macro. Do you want to just? I'll stop sharing and you take over.
Sure.